Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are walking into a bit of a minefield.
A minefield.
I don't mean that literally, though, given some of the professions we talk about, maybe I do. But I mean an ethical minefield. We're talking about that moment in your career where the rubber really meets the road.
Or where the immovable object meets the irresistible force, maybe.
That's a great way to put it. It's that tension, right?
Oh.
The one we've all felt. On one side, you have the person who, well, signed your paycheck. Your boss, your client.
The one who puts food on the table.
Exactly. And they want things done fast. They want them done cheap. And let's be honest, they usually want them done their way. But then on the other side, if you're a licensed professional, an engineer, a geoscientist, what have you, you're carrying this, I don't know, this invisible 50-pound backpack.
The backpack of professional duty. That's a good image.
Right. You have a duty to the public, duty to safety, to your code of ethics. And sometimes those two forces, the boss and the backpack, they pull in completely opposite directions. It's the classic professional tug-of-war.
It really is. And, this is probably the defining characteristic of what it means to be a professional. I mean, it's easy to be ethical when your boss agrees with you.
Of course.
The real test, the one that, defines your career and frankly keeps the public safe, is what you do when they don't agree.
So today we are going to dissect the role and responsibilities of professionals to employers and clients.
Yeah.
But before we get deep into the weeds of employment law and ethical philosophy, I have a very specific request.
Oh, yeah.
For everyone listening. If you are tuning in right now because you're prepping for your licensure exams, do yourself a favor, hit that like and subscribe button on the channel right now.
Good call.
We're making more content specifically tailored to the NPPE exam, and you are absolutely going to want these deep dives in your feed. It will help you pass.
Absolutely. The concepts we're covering today, loyalty, confidentiality, conflict of interest, these are high-yield topics on the exam. This isn't just good-to-know advice.
No.
This is the framework you need to understand to get those marks, and more importantly, to keep your license once you earn it.
Mission accepted then. Let's dive in. We're looking at this relationship between the professional and the employer. Now, usually when people talk about employment, it's all about, labor laws, vacation days, severance.
Right, the HR stuff.
But the material we're looking at suggests that for us, the whole conversation is totally different. It talks about a structured set of duties.
It is different. It's fundamentally different. If we zoom out and look at the big picture, we aren't just talking about contract for labor. We're talking about a hierarchy of ethical obligations.
A hierarchy?
Yeah. When you become a licensed professional, you're effectively accepting that you are no longer just an employee. You're not a cog in the machine whose only job is to do what the manager says. You become something else.
A guardian.
A guardian of standards. That's a perfect way to put it.
A guardian? That sounds noble. But let's play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay.
Most of our listeners, they have a boss.
Yeah.
That boss has a budget. If the boss says, I need this project done by Friday, and the guardian says, well, I need 2 more weeks for safety checks, that conversation, it doesn't always go well.
No, it often doesn't.
So why is the professional's burden so much heavier than, say, a graphic designer or a marketing coordinator?
It comes down to one specific thing, the knowledge gap. And this leads to a really key concept called the fiduciary-like relationship.
Okay, fiduciary-like. I've heard that term. Usually I think of like a financial advisor. I give them my money, and they have a legal duty to not, blow it on a trip to Vegas. They have to act in my best interest because they know how the market works, and I don't. Is that the same idea here?
It's a remarkably similar mechanic. Think about it this way. If you take your car to a mechanic because the engine is making a weird noise,
right,
you're vulnerable. You don't know if it's a loose 10-cent bolt or if the entire transmission is shot. You have to rely entirely on the mechanic's diagnosis. Because they have the magic knowledge and you don't, you are forced to trust them.
Right. I can't fact check them on the spot. I can't pop the hood and say, actually, the torque on that piston is all wrong. I'm totally blind.
Exactly. You are blind to the technical reality. And because you are blind, the law imposes a stricter duty on the mechanic, or in our case, the engineer or geoscientist, to not exploit that blindness.
So the client hires a professional because they don't have the expertise.
Precisely. The employer or the client hires you specifically because they lack the technical expertise to do the job themselves. And that right there, that creates a power imbalance.
Interesting. So the client has the money and the authority, but the professional has the knowledge power.
Correct. And that fiduciary-like expectation means that you, as the professional, cannot use your superior knowledge to take advantage of the client. You have to act in their best legitimate interests.
Best legitimate interests.
Okay. You can't, for example, recommend a more expensive type of steel beam just because you happen to own stock in the steel company.
Right.
You can't hide a calculation error just because it would be embarrassing to admit you made a mistake. It's about not exploiting that inherent trust.
That makes sense. But you use the phrase best legitimate interests. I feel like that word legitimate is doing a lot of heavy lifting in there.
It is the most important word in that entire sentence. An employer might have an interest in saving $1 million by, I don't know, dumping toxic waste into a local creek at night.
Sure, that's in their financial interest.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it is not a legitimate interest because it's illegal and it's unethical. Your duty is to help them achieve their goals, profit, efficiency, speed, but only, and this is the key, only within the boundaries of the law and the code of ethics.
Okay, so that brings us to another question. The distinction between being an employee and a consultant. Does this fiduciary-like vibe, does it change if I'm a salaried employee sitting in a cubicle versus some high-priced consultant billing by the hour?
This is a really common point of confusion, especially for the exam. And the answer is a resounding no.
No difference.
The context changes, sure. One gets a T4 slip, the other sends an invoice. But the core duties are identical. Whether you're internal or external, you are bound by the same code of ethics. You are a professional first and an employee second.
That's a bold statement. Professional first, employee second. Because, let's be honest, the person who fires you is the employer. The professional association, they just send you a magazine once a month.
It feels that way sometimes, doesn't it? But think about the consequences. If you lose your job, that's a temporary, albeit painful, financial hit.
Sure.
If you lose your license because you prioritized your employer's illegal request over your professional duty, your entire career is over. That backpack we talked about. You can't just take it off because you clocked in for the day.
So let's really dig into that conflict then. The professional judgment versus managerial authority clash. This is the scenario that keeps people up at night.
It is.
My manager, who maybe has an MBA but isn't an engineer, tells me, look, we are way over budget. Skip the secondary soil testing. We know the ground here is fine. Just sign off on it.
This is the nightmare scenario, and it's where a lot of young professionals crumble because they confuse insubordination with professional duty.
Right.
Here is the rule you need to burn into your brain. Professionals are not merely task executors. You do not check your brain at the door. You retain independent professional judgment always.
But the manager has the authority. They run the company. They're in charge.
They have authority over the objectives. They can tell you what they want. I want a bridge. I want it by July. I want it to cost $10 million. Those are business decisions.
Okay.
But, and this is the critical distinction, they cannot overrule you on the technical or ethical decisions regarding how to achieve those goals safely.
So they can set the destination, but they can't grab the steering wheel if you tell them the bridge ahead is out.
Precisely. That is the perfect analogy. They cannot tell you, use half the required rebar. They cannot tell you, skip the final safety check. If you allow a manager to overrule your technical judgment on a safety issue and something goes wrong, you cannot stand in front of a disciplinary committee and say, well, my boss told me to.
The just following orders defense?
It doesn't work. In engineering and geoscience, we often refer to it as the Nuremberg principle. It's a very heavy historical reference, but it applies. Responsibility is personal. You cannot delegate your ethical responsibility upward to a manager. If you stamp it, you own it, period.
Wow. That's empowering, but it's also terrifying. It puts so much pressure on the individual to be the buzzkill in the room.
It's supposed to be terrifying. That fear, that weight of responsibility is what keeps bridges from falling down. If it were easy to just pass the buck, we'd have a lot more failures.
Okay, let's move on. Section 2 of our outline, the core elements of duty. We've established that the relationship is special. Now let's talk about what makes it tick. The text highlights loyalty and competence. Let's start with loyalty.
Loyalty. It's a word that gets abused a lot in corporate culture. Be a team player. We're a family here.
Which usually translates to, don't complain when we ask you to work unpaid overtime.
Or don't point out the obvious flaws in the vice president's pet project. But in the professional context, the duty of loyalty means something very specific and very different.
Okay.
It means acting in good faith. It means you genuinely want your employer to succeed. You aren't sabotaging them. You're not taking their client lists and selling them to a competitor. You're not bad-mouthing them in public.
So, basic decent employee behavior.
Yes, but with a crucial twist. The nuance is that loyalty means honest service. And sometimes the most loyal thing you can possibly do is tell your boss they are wrong.
Wait, explain that. How is telling my boss they're about to make a huge mistake being loyal?
Okay, imagine your boss is driving a bus full of people, that's the company, and they're heading straight for a Claire. The yes man employee, the one who thinks loyalty means blind obedience, is sitting in the back cheering, "Great driving, boss, we are making excellent time."
And then the whole bus goes right off the cliff.
Exactly. And the company gets sued, people get hurt, the reputation is destroyed forever. Was that employee loyal? No, they were an enabler.
Mm.
The professional employee, the loyal one, looks at the map, sees the cliff, and walks right up to the driver and says, "Stop the bus. We are going to die if we keep going this way."
Even if the driver gets mad in that moment.
Even if the driver screams at you and threatens to throw you off the bus because you are protecting the entire company from a catastrophe. That is true loyalty. If you withhold critical information like this design will fail because you want to keep the boss happy in the short term, you are being profoundly disloyal. You're exposing them to massive liability.
That's a huge mindset shift. Loyalty isn't about being liked. It's about being effective and protective.
Correct. Now let's pair that with competence. This seems obvious, right? Be good at your job.
Yeah.
But the code of ethics takes it further. It creates a duty to acknowledge your limits.
The stay in your lane rule.
Yes. We call it the duty of competence. Professionals must only accept work they are actually competent to perform.
But isn't the whole ethos of modern work like, fake it till you make it?
Yeah.
You take the stretch assignment and you just figure it out on the fly.
A tech startup making a dating app. Maybe if the app crashes, nobody dies.
Right.
In structural engineering, absolutely not. Fake it till you make it is negligence. If you're a chemical engineer and you accept a project to design a high-voltage electrical substation because you want the bonus, you are breaching your duty.
So you have a duty to say no.
You have a duty to say, "I am not qualified for this." And this links to something we see a lot with younger engineers, imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
They feel like they should know everything, so they're afraid to ask for help or admit they don't know.
They think asking a question makes them look stupid.
And that silence is so dangerous. The Code of Ethics effectively says, put your ego aside. It is a professional duty to seek supervision or training if you don't know something. It is not a weakness to go to a senior engineer and say, "I've never calculated this specific load before. Can you review my work?"
That's actually the definition of professional behavior.
It is. Pretending you know what you're doing when you don't isn't just risky. It's unethical. It's potential malpractice.
Okay, so let's talk about the third leg of this stool. Honest and candid advice. We've kind of touched on the yes man, but this goes deeper into how we present information.
It does. A professional must not tailor their technical opinion to match what the client wants to hear. This happens all the time in consulting.
I can imagine.
The client has a preferred outcome. They want the environmental assessment to say the land is clean. They want the structural report to say the old building doesn't need expensive retrofitting.
And you just massage the data a little bit, maybe remove that one outlier sample.
And the answer must always be no. But candor goes beyond just not lying. It means giving the whole picture. You have to explain the risks, the uncertainties, and the potential consequences. You can't just give them the happy path. This leads to what's called the warning duty.
A warning duty. That sounds pretty ominous.
It is the obligation to speak up. If you see a course of action that is unsafe, illegal, or unethical, you cannot stay silent. In this context, silence is viewed as acquiescence.
So if you don't say anything, you're agreeing with it.
You have effectively approved it in the eyes of the law. If you sit in a meeting where a serious safety violation is planned and you say nothing, you share the liability.
Man, silence is liability. That's a bumper sticker for this whole deep dive.
It really is. It's a core principle.
Okay, let's shift gears to secrets. Section 3 in the outline. Confidentiality. We often call this the vault.
The vault is a good image. As a professional, you're led into the inner sanctum of a company. You see the trade secrets, the proprietary algorithms, their financial struggles, the new product designs before they ever launch.
And the rule is simple. Zip it. Keep your mouth shut.
Generally, yes. The obligation to maintain confidentiality applies during your employment, and crucially, it continues after the relationship ends. You can't leave Apple, go work for Samsung, and say, hey guys, here is exactly how the iPhone's battery management system works.
That's theft of intellectual property, a huge breach of confidence.
A massive breach.
Okay, but this is a deep dive, which means there's always an exception. There's always a loophole.
It's not a loophole so much as an override switch. Confidentiality is not absolute. The vault has a panic button, and that button is the duty to the public.
So when do you get to press the panic button?
When there is a serious risk to public safety or evidence of illegal conduct or serious environmental harm.
Give me a concrete example.
Let's say you're working for a manufacturing plant. You find out they are secretly bypassing their water treatment system and dumping heavy metals directly into the town's water supply to save money.
Go.
You have a duty of confidentiality to your client about their processes, but you have a much higher duty to the public's health.
So you call the newspaper. You go straight to the press.
Not yet. And this is where people get tripped up on the exam and in real life. The process matters immensely. You don't just blast it on Twitter. You have to be measured and professional.
Right.
You start internally. You go to the plant manager and you say, we have a problem. If they ignore you, you go to the VP of operations. You try to fix the problem within the organization first.
You give them a chance to correct the mistake themselves.
Exactly. You assume they want to do the right thing. But if they refuse, if they say, keep your mouth shut or you're fired, and you know the dumping is continuing, then the override kicks in.
Then you go external.
Then you are obligated to report it to the authorities, like the Ministry of the Environment. The safety of the town's water supply outweighs the business secret of the client.
We're definitely going to get to the how of that reporting whistle blowing in a little bit. But first, let's talk about what feels like the silent career killer. Section 4. Conflicts of interest.
Ah, yes. The most common ethical trap there is.
Why do you call it a trap?
Because it's so insidious. Most professionals are honest people. They think, I'm a person of integrity. I can handle this. I won't let it affect my judgment.
Right, I can separate the two things.
But they don't realize that the existence of the conflict is the problem, not just the outcome.
So define it for us. What is a conflict of interest?
At its core, it's any situation where your personal interest or a duty you owe to someone else, like a former client, clashes with your duty to your current client or employer. It splits your loyalty.
Okay, the outline here lists 3 types. Actual, potential, and perceived. Actual seems easy enough. I'm in charge of hiring a contractor for a project, and I hire my own brother's company without telling anyone.
Right. That's a direct present conflict. You are clearly biased, or at least you could be.
What about potential?
Okay. That's something that is reasonably foreseeable. Let's say I'm working on the design phase of a project, and I know my brother's company is planning to bid on the construction phase next year. It hasn't happened yet, but the train is on the tracks. You need to manage that now before it becomes a full-blown collision.
And then there's the one that confuses everyone, perceived.
This is the optics one. A perceived conflict exists when you might be totally innocent, you might be acting with 100% integrity, but to a reasonable outsider, it just looks suspicious. It smells funny.
Why does that matter? I mean, if I know I'm being honest, why should I care what it looks like to someone else?
Because our entire profession runs on public trust. If the public thinks engineers are taking bribes or that geoscientists are handing out contracts to their friends, they stop trusting the bridges, the water reports, the buildings. The perception can be just as damaging as the reality.
So let's take the classic lunch example. A concrete supplier wants to take me out for a really fancy steak dinner. I'm thinking, hey, it's a free steak. I'm not going to buy their bad concrete just because they bought me a steak.
You might be completely sincere in that. But if your competitor sees you laughing over a $200 bottle of wine with that supplier, and then a week later that supplier gets the contract, what does that look like?
It looks rigged. It looks like I was bought off.
Exactly. And that perception undermines the integrity of the whole process. That's why many companies have strict no gifts or low-value gifts-only policies. It's not because they don't want you to have a nice steak. It's because they don't want the appearance of impropriety.
Okay, so what's the cure? How do we escape this trap?
Sunlight. The cure is disclosure. Full, honest, and early disclosure.
Just telling yourself. That feels counterintuitive.
It does, but hiding the conflict is almost always a worse ethical breach than the conflict itself. If you disclose it, hey boss, just so you know, my cousin owns the company that's bidding on this, you shift the burden.
You put the ball in their court.
Precisely. Management can then make an informed decision. They can say, okay, thanks for telling us. We'll have Sarah evaluate that bid instead of you. Problem solved. Or they might say, we know you and trust you. It's fine. But transparency allows the client to provide consent. If you hide it, you're robbing them of that choice.
So when in doubt, spit it out.
I like that. Yes, that's a perfect way to remember it.
Okay, let's move to section 5. This is a big one. Obedience, dissent, and that just following orders defense again. We've touched on this, but let's get into the mechanics of saying no, because in the real world, that is just awkward.
It's incredibly awkward. Nobody enjoys being the squeaky wheel.
So the idea is there's a hierarchy of obedience. I have to follow lawful instructions. If my boss tells me to format a report in Comic Sans.
It's a crime against design, but it's not an ethical violation. You grit your teeth and you do it. You must follow all lawful and ethical instructions. But, and this is the line in the sand, you must not follow instructions that require negligence, incompetence, or illegal acts.
So walk me through the duty to object. I'm in the meeting. The boss suggests the unsafe shortcut. I can't just cross my arms and pout in the corner.
No, being grumpy isn't a professional defense. You have to handle this systematically. First, you clearly explain your concerns. Don't be vague. Don't say, I just don't think this is a good idea.
Be specific.
Be specific. Say, this approach violates section 4.1 of the building code and could lead to sheer failure under load. Use technical reasoning. Show the math if you have to.
Okay.
Second, and this is what separates a good professional from just a nuisance, propose a viable alternative. We can't do option A because it's unsafe, but if we resequence the work and do option B, we can still meet the project deadline.
So you're trying to solve the business problem. You're not just being a blocker.
Correct. You're showing that your loyalty is to the project's success, but it's safe success. But let's say they ignore you. They say, we appreciate your input, but do option A or you're fired. Now what?
No, I'm guessing this is where the paper trail comes in.
If you don't write it down, it didn't happen. You need to document your objection immediately. Send a clear professional email right after the meeting. Dear boss, just to confirm our discussion from 2 p.m. today, I formally advised against proceeding with option A due to safety concern X.
That feels so passive-aggressive, though.
It feels that way in the moment, but it is actually your professional life insurance. If that building collapses in 5 years and people die, that email is the only thing standing between you and a prison cell. It proves you did your duty. Remember, silence equals liability.
Okay, so you've objected, you've documented it, you've proposed alternatives, and they still decide to proceed with the dangerous plan. Now we are at section 6, the nuclear option, whistleblowing.
This is the end of the line. This is when you realize the problem cannot be solved internally and you have to go outside the organization to a regulator, the labor board, or in rare cases, the press.
Why do you call it the nuclear option?
Because once you push that button, there is no going back. The fallout is immense. You will almost certainly be fired. You will be blacklisted by that employer. Your colleagues, even the ones who agreed with you privately, might resent you publicly. It destroys relationships.
So this is not something you do lightly.
Never. It is the absolute last resort. And the criteria for doing it are very strict. 1, is the danger serious and immediate to the public or the environment? 2, have you exhausted all internal avenues? Did you go to the manager, the VP, the ethics hotline, the board of directors?
You had to have tried everything else first.
Everything. And 3, do you have concrete evidence? You can't just blow the whistle because you have a hunch or you're annoyed with your boss. It must be done in good faith to protect the public, not out of malice or for personal revenge.
A truly heroic act, but a very costly one.
It is. And while the law offers some protections for whistleblowers, the reality on the ground is that it's a very difficult, very stressful path. But the alternative, sitting by and allowing a disaster to happen, is far worse.
Let's quickly touch on section 7 before we get to the exam scenarios. Consultants. We mentioned earlier that the duties are the same, but the pressures can be a little different.
For a consultant, your entire product is your opinion. Clients are hiring you for your independent, objective advice.
But sometimes they're really hiring you because they want you to back up a decision they've already made.
The rubber stamp.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They want you to write a report that justifies their predetermined plan. This is the biggest pressure point for consultants.
So what's the rule?
If you alter your professional findings to suit the client's desired narrative, if you say the land is safe for development when your tests show it isn't, you have destroyed your own value. You've compromised your integrity.
Because once you get a reputation as a hired gun,
Right.
who will say anything for a paycheck?
Your signature becomes worthless. Your credibility is gone. And you become a danger to the public. You have to maintain your independence, you define the scope of work clearly, you do the work objectively, and you let the chips fall where they may.
Even if it means the client gets mad and doesn't hire you again.
Better to lose one client than to lose your license. Always.
All right, we have covered a massive amount of theory. Now let's bring it home for the people listening on their commute who have an exam next week. Section 8, Applied Knowledge.
This is where we turn the philosophy into points on the exam. The NPPE doesn't usually ask, what is the definition of loyalty? It gives you a messy, real-world scenario and asks, what is the most appropriate action to take next?
And to answer those, we need that golden rule. We need the hierarchy of obligations. What is it?
If you memorize nothing else from this deep dive, memorize this order of operations. Your paramount duty is to the public. Below that is your duty to the client or employer. And at the bottom is your duty to yourself and your career.
Public over client. Client over self.
Always. If you are stuck on a question, apply that filter. Which of these options best protects the public? Which one best serves the legitimate interests of the client? Which one is just about me saving my own skin? The right answer is always at the top of that list.
Okay, let's run a scenario blitz. I'm going to throw a situation at you. You tell me the NPPE approved answer.
Let's do it.
Scenario A. You're on a job site. Your manager tells you to ignore a clear safety violation because fixing it will delay the project by a week and cost money. What is the correct action? Do you just quit on the spot?
No, absolutely not. Quitting immediately is often the wrong answer because that removes the one person who knows about the danger, leaving the public at even greater risk. The correct first action is to object and advise. You formally state your objection, you explain the safety risk, and you refuse to carry out the unsafe instruction. If they persist, then you escalate, but the first step is always to try to fix it internally.
Okay. Scenario B. You are reviewing bids for a new ventilation system for a project. You realize your cousin owns one of the supplier companies. Their bid is actually really good. It's the lowest price and meets all the specs. Can you just pick it? It's the best one anyway?
Nope. That is a clear conflict of interest, or at least a perceived one. The correct action is disclosure. You stop what you're doing, you go to your supervisor, and you say, I need to recuse myself from this decision, or at least make you aware that I have a family connection to this bidder. You let the supervisor decide how to manage the conflict. You do not make the decision yourself, even if you think you're being objective.
Got it. Final one. Scenario C. You're working for a mining company. You discover through your work that they are leaking toxic chemicals into a nearby river. You tell your boss. He says, don't worry, we'll fix it next year. You tell the VP of operations. She says, mind your own business. The company's confidentiality rules say you can't talk about internal company business. What do?
This is the classic hierarchy question. Correct action. The duty to the public to prevent harm overrides your duty of confidentiality to your employer. Since you have exhausted internal channels and the risk to the public and environment is serious and ongoing, you are now obligated to report it to the appropriate external regulatory authority. You blow the whistle.
Boom. That hierarchy really makes it so much clearer. It frames the professional, not as some kind of hired gun.
But as a trusted advisor, that is the key term. A hired gun does whatever you pay them to do, no questions asked. A trusted advisor tells you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear, in order to be safe, compliant, and ultimately successful. The exam wants to see that you understand that you are the advisor, not the gun.
So let's wrap this all up. We've established that the duty to the employer is central. I mean, it's who pays the bills, but it exists within this very rigid hierarchy. The professional is the bridge between the client's goals and the public's safety.
That's a perfect summary. You are the bridge. You connect technical expertise with ethical safety. And if that bridge fails because you were too scared to speak up or too greedy to be honest, people get hurt.
So here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on as we finish up. We've talked a lot about rules and codes and big dramatic scenarios, but I want you to think about tomorrow morning at work.
I want the listener to really consider this. In your daily work, when you log in, are you acting as a specialized employee, someone who just does what they're told to keep the paycheck coming? Or are you acting as a professional, someone who actively guards the standards of the entire profession? The difference might seem subtle on a boring Tuesday morning, but in a crisis, that difference is everything.
That is the difference between having a job and having a profession.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for breaking all of this down with us. This was heavy, but so necessary.
My pleasure. It's a critical topic.
And remember, if you want to be successful on the NPPE exam and hear more deep dives just like this one, please like and subscribe to the channel right now. It really helps us and we know we'll help you pass.
Good luck with your studies.
We'll see you in the next deep dive.